Clerics are a type of magic users that use mind magic. Clerics' magic is mostly defensive at first and then progresses to more offensive spells. The cleric's job is to keep all the other players alive, by healing and by saving them if they get themselves in trouble. Clerics' amulets, the symbol they wear around their necks that depict their deity, also grant them additional powers. When a cleric is wearing her amulet, the cleric is immune to poison, cannot be tied up by non-magical means. The cleric can just pull her arms out, and can ward off the undead. They may also destroy minor undead if they can back the undead into a corner and then place their amulet on its forehead. This will work better for minor undead than for major undead. Clerics do not use bladed weapons, as bladed weapons will usually cause more damage than a club or mace. A cleric is not one to want to cause death and destruction, so their main choice of weapon will more likely knock the enemy out rather than kill them. A cleric is just an average fighter. A cleric is of average height and weight. Clerics usually wear their clerical robes, which look like fancy fighters' clothing, with their amulets lying on top for all to see. Clerics have light armor but usually will enchant their robes for protection. Clerics start with a mace, club, quarterstaff, throwing hammers, whip, net, trident, or some other non-edged weapon. They may use bows and crossbows. A good outfit to start a cleric with is a mace, bow, and one quiver of arrows, 20 arrows. Clerical to attack, or try to take over, another cleric or wizard's mind. In this battle, the luck of the dice is the only factor, unless the cleric has improved mind powers. When the cleric attacks, you roll the 20-sided die one time for the cleric, and then one time for the enemy. You roll 6 to 8 times, and whoever gets the better average of the rolls wins the battle and is under the control of the other. If the cleric has improved mind powers, then she has 2 to 3 rolls for every one of the enemies. Each turn the controlled person has the chance to try to break out with one roll. While a cleric is in a mind battle, they are defenseless and are at the mercy of those around them for the length of the battle. Clerics need to make sure that they have protection while entering a mind battle. The mind that the cleric is attacking is also in the same state of helplessness. There are various sects of clerics. They are fire, ice, wind, earth, war, battle, healing, lunar, charge, death, shadow hand, and bestiary. Depending on which sect the cleric belongs to helps determine what special powers they may acquire during the game. The section also lets you know what you are going to be more proficient in. Origin of the deities. No one is quite sure how the deities came into existence. Some say that they were once great warriors, men and women who roamed the earth trying to improve the world around them. Others say that the Creator first brought them into existence when the need was the greatest. No one is quite sure. One thing the scholars all agree on is that the deities are powerful beings who share some of their power with those who serve them. It was during the time of the Great War, some call it the time of darkness, or the time of the awakening, that the clerics of the various deities suddenly showed up and began to turn the tides of the battle. The battle in the Great Forest is well known, and all have much to thank the Kivs for. Less known are the bands of ravaging bandits and thieves that sprung up at the same time the call of war sounded throughout the kingdoms. These bandits often had wizards with them. The wizards say they were forced into servitude, while the bandits say they came to them. The added magical powers of the wizards gave them a large advantage over the guards and those who had banded together for safety. The bandits started to form larger bands, and it seemed that no one could stand before them. It was at this critical time that the clerics first showed up. With their help, the groups of survivors were able to finally drive out the bandits from their lands. Wizards are still not trusted in the lands to this day, and thus they are a close-mouthed bunch, slow to befriend others of their kind. After the bandits were removed, the scholars of the day came together and compiled a work called Beginnings, after talking to the head cleric of each order about the supposed origins of their deities. Since there are only 12 copies of the book, it is a highly sought-after treasure. Clerics have enough magical energy, mana, for 24 spell slots. Then the cleric needs to rest for about 5 to 7 days to allow their magical energy to recharge, or need to sleep through the night to allow some mana, 2 to 3 spells, to recharge. The following is a list of spells that all clerics can acquire. This list does not include the specialty spells that clerics can acquire from the deity. As clerics get more powerful, they have the chance to gain spells from other clerical sects, if they do favors for those other deities. Clerical shared magic. Almost all clerics start with the same spells, the exception is the bestiary cleric. Healing. All clerics can heal minor and major wounds. The amount of healing possible and the time required to heal a wound depends on the strength of the cleric. Web. A large sticky web that the caster can throw out to capture an enemy. You need magical weapons or a magical resistance to escape these webs. Duration is dice dependent. Wall. A wall 6 feet high and 4 feet wide that can block incoming objects or people. Duration is dice dependent. Light. Creates a ball of light that you can see by, that floats above the cleric's head, or the cleric can fix it to a certain point. Duration is dice dependent. Lifting. The ability to lift objects, or people, into the air, and to move them about. Duration is dice dependent. The next group of spells is used by all clerics, but they have to earn them through adventuring. Clerics can also decide to improve their mind powers instead of acquiring a new spell. Improved mind powers. Clerics have the choice to get increased mind powers instead of gaining another spell. The cleric can do this 3 times, for up to 4 times mind powers. All clerics start with 1 times mind powers. With improved mind powers, the cleric can more easily take over the mind of a wizard or other cleric, or take over the mind of a non-magic user. When you engage in a mind battle, you get the extra roll per each mind improvement. So you would get 2 rolls for the enemy's 1 roll to take over the target's mind if you had 2 mind powers. Times 1 regular starting mind powers. The cleric can tell when someone is lying to you or is uneasy in their thoughts. Instead of a minor spell, times 2 can read surface thoughts easily and tell when someone is lying to you with ease. In a mind battle, the cleric now gets 2 shakes of the dice instead of the 1. Instead of a mid-level spell, times 3 can now read thoughts easily and can start to put suggestions in other minds. Can reach out to companions and send messages to them. In a mind battle, the cleric now gets 3 shakes of the dice instead of the 1. Instead of a major spell, times 4 massive mind powers now. Can take over another's mind even if not a magic user easily and make them believe what you want him to. Can read thoughts easily and can send messages over long distances to other companions. More easily talks to the chosen deity and can more easily get divine help from them. In a mind battle, the cleric now gets 4 shakes of the dice instead of the 1. Minor spells. Sleep. Puts the target to sleep. Duration is dice dependent. Silence. An area of quiet surrounds the target in the size, square feet, of 1 roll of the die. Duration is dice dependent. Translation. Translates any written language. Duration is dice dependent. Linguist. Lets the caster understand any language. Duration is dice dependent. Speed. Speeds up a character to twice their natural speed for a certain time limit, up to 4 moves per turn. Duration is dice dependent. Slow. Slows down a target to half its normal speed for a time. Duration is dice dependent. Tracking. The caster can track the target anywhere, even over water or rocks. Duration is dice dependent. The caster has to have seen the target to cast the spell but doesn't have to have the target in sight. Mid-level spells. Magic missile. An item is hurled, such as a rock or arrow, that when hit causes the damage of a small missile and depending on the object can also cause shrapnel damage. A new spell must be cast for each object. Personal protection causes a protective covering around the caster, companion that can withstand various numbers of hits. Duration is dice dependent. The amount of hits the protection can withstand is the number from the one roll of the die. Sticks to snakes. A bundle of sticks is turned into a group of poisonous snakes for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. There are 20 snakes max with each spell, and the caster can decide which type of snake. Grenadier. The caster hurls an exploding grenade that causes a shrapnel-based attack. This will hurt the caster's companions as well. Mind missile. The caster causes an invisible missile to fly at the target. Major spells. Thunder. A great booming noise causes the target's bones to shake and crack. Missile chain. The caster causes 6 to 10 missiles to fly at the target. Anti-magic. The caster causes all magic in an area to become nullified. Duration and size are dice dependent. Area is the size in square feet of one shake of the die. Heavenly Host calls forth a group, 15, of winged warriors to protect the caster. Duration is dice dependent. All warriors are armed with a sword and shield. These warriors do massive damage to the undead. Bolt of the Deity. A massive magical bolt of pure power is blasted at the target. This bolt will melt all minor undead, hurt major undead, and cause truly evil beings to be knocked down, and they may become unconscious. Duration is dice dependent. The stronger the mind powers, the stronger the bolt. Resurrection. The caster can raise a companion from the dead. The resurrected companion loses the highest spell, ability that they have acquired. The other spells clerics get are dependent on their sect. Fire sect. Origin of fire deity. Name, Infernia. It is said that Infernia came from the Far East, from the lands of the driving sands. It is so hot there that very few things can survive. Infernia survived the wasteland only by submitting his body to the vast heated stretchers and thus becoming one with the inferno that he came to call home. He decided to leave the lands after many years, in which he realized that he was no longer growing older and that he had become a part of the burning lands. His time in them had allowed him to gain control of the element of fire. This opened up vast portals in his mind that allowed him to grasp the magic of the world around him and bend it to his will. It also gave him the ability to share his power with those who were willing to serve him. By gaining followers he received additional strength, thus allowing him to become a deity. Minor spells. Fireman spell. The caster, companions are immune to fire. Duration is dice dependent. Fireball. Ability to throw a ball of fire. Burning hands. Lets the target's hands catch on fire so that when they touch something it burns up, doors or enemies, for example. Duration is dice dependent. Fire splash. When the target is hit with fire, everything in a 3-foot radius around the target also receives fire damage. Buffer zone. An area around the target, the size of one shake of the dice, in which the undead cannot enter. Any undead who enter this area will start to catch on fire and melt away. Duration is dice dependent. Damage to the undead depends on the strength of the undead. Fire javelin. The caster creates a quiver of fire javelins, up to 20, that can be thrown at the enemy. Duration is dice dependent. Burning sands. A whirlwind of intensely superheated sand spirals around the target, blinding and gagging them. Also burning any exposed skin. Duration is dice dependent. The grip of flame. The caster's hands become encased in fire, and when they strike the target it receives strike and fire damage. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Dozer. The target can move anything out of their path for 30 feet as they charge ahead. This can be a door, enemy, or non-magical attack. Magical attacks and spells are not affected by this spell. Fireblade. Caster calls forth a sword made of fire to fight with. Duration is dice dependent. Chain. the target is sent away 66 feet. Entrapment, the target is trapped in place and can't move from that spot, duration is dice dependent. Backfire, the attack coming at the cleric is turned to the side, and misses, spell is one-time use. Transform into a campfire, lets the caster transform into a campfire to hide, pull guard duty, or set a fake camp for some who are following him, duration is dice dependent. Living fire, caster causes a fire source, such as a torch, fireball, or campfire, to come alive and fight for them, duration is dice dependent. Halo of fire, a ring of fire surrounds the enemy's head, burning downward. Firewalk, allows the caster to pass from one fire to another. This can be torches, campfires, or any type of blaze. The caster must see both the beginning and end points. Fire whirl, a tornado of fire is created that follows the caster's directions, duration is dice dependent. Fire spiders, the caster calls forth up to 7 3-foot tall spiders made of fire to attack the target, duration is dice dependent. Corpse burning, a dead body is incinerated, usually to prevent an evil cleric from raising it from the dead to attack you. Mop up, this spell is only cast on the last survivor in an enemy group. This person will take the last damage that their last survivor took. If this was a mortal wound, then this last enemy would receive that wound. Flaming phalanges, the caster shoots 5 finger-sized bolts of fire at the target. These firebolts can feel around the target's armor or a door frame and burn what is inside. Fire friend, caster calls forth a companion made of fire to help protect the caster and to do his bidding, duration is dice dependent. Guardian fire, a ball of fire surrounds the caster, shooting small fireballs at nearby enemies, duration is dice dependent. Pancreatic burn, the caster causes the target's pancreas to feel like it is on fire. Desert sun, an intense beam of super bright, hot light strikes the target in the eyes, and their eyes burn out. A fire bee swarm causes a swarm of 1-inch flying firebugs to attack an enemy, duration is dice dependent. Hash in the swarm is the amount of 1 shake of a 20-sided die. Homo sapiens conflagration, causing the target's clothing to catch on fire, duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Helibase, this is a place set the day before by the caster. Once during the next day, the caster can move up to 8 targets from where they are to the site of the helicase. This spell must be set 1 day ahead for it to work. Detection, the caster can detect anyone in a 100 feet radius, no matter how they are hidden. This includes if there is someone in the radius using magic to hide, duration is dice dependent. Blow up, any object on the target explodes in a fiery ball of heat. Creeping fire, a small fire figure 1 inch tall creeps up on the target and jumps on it. Upon hitting the target, the creeper gets 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide and is 700 F. Only magic can detect the creeper while approaching. Fire elemental, caster calls forth a being made of fire to attack the enemies, duration is dice dependent. Fire beat transformation, the target changes into a fire monstrosity, being able to use all types of fire attacks, control any fire in the area, and instantly travel between any points of fire that can be seen, duration is dice dependent. In this form, the target is only hurt by magic weapons and spells. Firestorm, the caster calls forth a massive firestorm to destroy an area and anything in the area. Caster's companions will also die if they are in the storm radius. Ice sect. Origin of ice deity. Name, Nauli. Nauli worshippers first came from the far north, across the mountains and the great frozen sea. It is said that they started to worship Nauli in the hopes that she would protect him from the dangers of their homeland. As they started to worship the unknown being, They did not realize that a powerful guardian spirit had escaped from a frozen prison in the area. Their supplications drew the spirit, and it took the body of the top priestess. The priestess gained immortal life, and the spirit found a home in which to dwell. With the increased worship, the spirit could help protect the tribe until they could make it across the frozen ocean and mountains and reach civilization. Minor spells. Frostville, caster, companions are immune to ice, water attacks and cold. Duration is dice dependent. Ice, ability to throw ice or freeze targets in ice. Duration is dice dependent. Ice javelin, the caster throws a javelin of ice at the enemy. Duration is dice dependent. Ice wall, the caster makes a solid barrier of ice 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall to protect him, herself. This can be exploded at the enemy in a wall of ice shards at will. Duration is dice dependent. Acid, the caster can throw up to 4 balls of acid at the target per turn. Duration is dice dependent. Ice blade, caster calls forth a sword made of ice to fight with. Duration is dice dependent. The blade is magically hardened and freezes undead in the area where they are hit. Lotic waters, the target is swept away from the area on a wall of water. The target travels at least 100 feet. Snowshoe, the caster calls forth magic snowshoes that give him, her the ability to walk on snow and ice or to skate across them as if wearing skis. Duration is dice dependent. Hot steam, the caster shoots a burning hot blast of steam that scalds and burns all it hits. The blast lasted for 3 seconds. Mid-level spells. Turbidity, the air around the target becomes dark and fuzzy and the target can't see more than 10 feet in any direction. Duration is dice dependent. Ice javelin replication, the caster creates a quiver of ice javelins, up to 20, that can be thrown at the enemy. Duration is dice dependent. Seepage, the target can slip through a crack of any size. Duration is dice dependent. Giardiasis, the target receives a massive case of giardiasis and can't stop having massive diarrhea on the spot till they're healed. Effluent, the target is covered in cold human waste. Oxygen demand, the target area up to 20 feet has all the oxygen removed from it. Duration is dice dependent. Kilograms, the target's weight is increased to 1,000 kilograms. Duration is dice dependent. Icy razor wall caster calls forth a wall made of ice razors to stop an attacker, or to throw at an enemy with lifting. Duration is dice dependent. Bubble breath, cast a bubble of air around the head of the caster, companion so they can travel underwater for long distances. Duration is dice dependent. Water walk, allows caster, companion to walk on liquids. This could be water, fog, thin ice, or any unlit volatile substance. Duration is dice dependent. Killing cuticles, 5 small shards of ice fly at the target. These can penetrate armor and almost any non-magical surface. Acre-foot 325,851 gallons of freezing waterfall on the target. Desalination, the target loses all salt from their body, making them get lightheaded and collapse. Bedrock, the target's feet are planted to the ground, and they can't move. Duration is dice dependent. Body of frozen thorns, the caster grows large thorns made of ice, 3 feet long. These thorns are poisonous. Duration is dice dependent. Transpiration, all the target's water leaves the body and goes into the closest plants. Major spells. Condensation, the target's lungs fill with water, and they must hack it up or die or suffocate. Pancreatic freeze, the caster causes the target's pancreas to feel frozen. Guardian ice, a ball of ice surrounds the caster, shooting small ice balls at nearby enemies, and blocking incoming range attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Iceberg drop, the target has a 3-ton iceberg dropped on them. Water whip, a whip made of water is created to fight with. This has the power of an enchanted weapon. Duration is dice dependent. Leeching, the target loses all magic, including magic from magical items, and it is sent to the caster. Excess magic goes to the caster's companions until all are recharged. Any extra magic after that gets sent into the ground. Ice fields, caster calls ice shards to explode from the ground in a radius. The size of the field is dependent on the strength of the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Erosion, the target's skin feels like it is melting off the body. Living snow, the caster causes the snow in an area to become a frozen beast with claws and fangs. 3 beasts can be created from any one area of snow, ice, or water. Duration is dice dependent. Ice elemental, caster calls forth a being made of ice to attack the enemies. Duration is dice dependent. Frozen body, the target is instantly frozen in a block of ice. Duration is dice dependent. Freeze cells, the water in the target's cells freezes solid, thus incapacitating the target, and if they do not get healing, they will die in 4 turns. Freezing mist, caster calls forth a mist that freezes all that it touches. The size of the mist is dependent on the strength of the caster. Extract water, the caster pulls all the water out of the target. Ice storm, the caster calls forth a massive ice storm to destroy an area. Caster's companions will also die if they are in the storm radius. Ice beast transformation, the target changes into an ice monstrosity, being able to use all types of ice attacks, control any water or ice in the area, and instantly travel between any points of water or ice that can be seen. Duration is dice dependent. In this form, the target is only hurt by magic weapons and spells. Wind sect. Origin of the deity of wind. Name, Epo. Epo was said to have been discovered by the giant crow riders of the south. While sailing high above the earth, they were said to have heard strange voices in the winds. At first, these were dismissed as echoes traveling up from the grounds, but later it was found to be something else. They tracked the voices to a great cave on the edge of their lands. Their greatest warrior descended the cave to search for the voices' origin. After 3 weeks, the warrior returned, armed with a great staff topped with a white ruby. The warrior proclaimed himself as Epo, and that he had come to serve the wind people. Further research revealed that Epo was trapped in a prison while traveling across the dimensions. The warrior freed the Great Spirit, on condition that he serve the people. Thus the deity of wind was born. Minor spells. Air travel allows the caster, companions to run along the air to a certain destination, or to stop when falling. Duration is dice dependent. Halitosis. The caster can blow forth a mighty breath of wind to knock down an enemy or barrier. Axis. The target can't catch their balance. Duration is dice dependent. Blinding wind. The wind comes at the caster's call to cause blindness to all in the target area. Duration is dice dependent. Sonic blast. Causes a force of blasting sound to knock over everything in a certain area. Holy tune. The caster sings a song that causes all evil, especially weaker undead, who hear it to become stunned for 3 rounds. Blade. The target is caught in the wind and gets knocked off course or off their feet. Coil. The target's legs get tangled, and they trip and fall. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Air gap. The target is thrown up to 50 feet in any direction with the power of an ogre's throw. Unless they hit something first. Angle of attack. The caster will know the next attack before the enemy makes it. Duration is dice dependent. Binding wind. The wind comes to the caster's bidding to tie up the target. Duration is dice dependent. Shield of the winds. The caster can create a shield out of winds that can stop all non-magical attacks, and any magic attacks once. Duration is dice dependent. Flying leap. The target can leap up to 60 feet twice as fast as usual. Wind protection. The caster calls forth armor made of air to block and protect him, herself. Duration is dice dependent. Pegasus. The steed of the caster grows wings and can fly. Duration is dice dependent. Crow call. A giant crow is summoned and must serve the caster till dawn of the next day. 2 people can ride the crow at one time. Diode. The target can only move in one direction. Duration is dice dependent. Armature. The caster creates a magical barrier around themselves that causes up to 4 ranged, 4 melee, 4 minor spells, and 2 major spells to miss the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Wind barrier. Can create a barrier of air around him, herself, and use this to block range weapons, people, yet you still can fire out of the barrier. Duration is dice dependent. Guardian wind. A small tornado circles the target, blocking non-magical weapons, and blocking the first spell that is thrown at the target. Duration is dice dependent. This tornado also can block or slow down a charging enemy. Tornado. Caster calls up a small tornado to knock down an enemy or barrier. Duration is dice dependent. Drag. The wind reaches the target and removes whatever the target determines should be removed, such as a weapon or body part. Vane. A large sail is created in the caster's hands which they can use to fly away from the area as fast as a galloping horse. Duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Group transport. The caster can use the wind to carry the companions a great distance, up to 10 miles, in a short amount of time. Duration is dice dependent. Living tornado. The caster calls up a tornado that follows the direction of the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Reverse. The caster causes the attack to turn back on the attacker. Alternating current. The target can be moved to the caster's choosing, within a 1/2 mile of the target's location. Grasp of the winds. Whatever attack is coming at the target, be it magical or non-magical, it can be caught, and the target can direct the attack to another target. Duration is dice dependent. Solar winds. The target gathers heat so fast that it burns to ashes within 2 seconds. Sucking breath. The caster can either suck the breath out of the target or force more air into their lungs, causing them to cough violently for 5 minutes unless healed. One-time use only. Weather call. Caster calls forth certain types of weather on the winds, such as large tornadoes, fog, hail, and smoke. Battery bank. All minor spell attacks are transformed into mana to be used by the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Coercivity. All energy is taken from the target, and they fall to the ground unconscious. Wind companion. A companion made of wind energy protects the target. This companion can use any kind of air attack and is only harmed by magical weapons and spells. Duration is dice dependent. Transform to wind. The target is transformed to a cyclonic force wind gust, and can either flee, attack, or carry a companion to a destination. Duration is dice dependent. Wind beast transformation. The target changes into a wind monstrosity, being able to use all types of air attacks, control the air in a 40-foot radius around themselves, and instantly jump up to 80 feet in any direction. Duration is dice dependent. In this form, the target is only hurt by magic weapons and spells. Earth sect. Origin of the deity of Earth. Name, Clerics. It is said that the earth spewed forth Clerics from a fissure in the great forest. Some believe that the Kivs raised her, while others are sure that she was raised by the elves in their distant land. None know for sure. Clerics is surrounded in mystery, and none are even sure what she looks like. Her followers first showed up at one of the last battles, which took place near the great forest. Many of her followers spend a great length of time in the forest and enjoy solitary lives. Minor spells. Earth ripple. A wave of earth rolls towards the enemies, knocking them down. The wave can travel up to 12 feet in any one direction. Compass. Caster always knows where the group is on the quest in comparison with the ending goal. Duration is dice dependent. Animal communicator. Allows communication with animals. Duration is dice dependent. Animal control. Allows control of animals. Size determined by strength of the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Ferocity. The caster causes the target to become exceedingly ferocious, and the target can now take 3 to 4 mortal hits before being stopped. Duration is dice dependent. Bubble breath. Cast a bubble of air around the head of the caster, companion, so they can travel underwater for long distances. Duration is dice dependent. Rebuke. The caster causes the target not to want to battle with him, her anymore. Duration is dice dependent. Cullet. Glass shards fly from the caster's hands into the target's face. Mid-level spells. Water walk. Allows caster, companion to walk on liquids. This could be water, fog, thin ice, or any unlit volatile substance. Duration is dice dependent. Throw rock. Caster can throw rocks at targets, causing them to hit with the power of a magic missile. 1 spell for each missile. Pegasus. The steed of the caster grows wings and can fly. Duration is dice dependent. Holy tune. The caster sings a song that causes all evil, especially the undead, who hear it to become stunned for 3 rounds. Moving eye. The caster can see through ant substance, and in any direction for up to 20 feet. Duration is dice dependent. Orb of force. The caster shoots a ball of pure force at the target. This orb causes massive damage to weaker undead. Rhino charge. The caster can hit the target with the force of a charging rhinoceros. Body of thorns. The caster grows large thorns all over their body. These thorns are poisonous. Duration is dice dependent. Iron horn. Caster changed into a large bull elephant, 2 tons, that has a set of iron horns and its skin is as strong as good plate armor. Duration is dice dependent. Animal madness. The target becomes mad, attacking anything close to it. Duration is dice dependent. Summon giant serpent. The caster calls forth a giant serpent that can travel through the ground and has super strong scales. This serpent does the bidding of the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Train animal. Any animal will instantly be trained to serve the needs of the caster. The size of the animal is dependent on the strength of the caster. Major spells. Biotic 1000 insects, ants, spiders, bees, and wasps erupt from the ground and attack the target. Duration is dice dependent. Sink, drown. The caster causes the target to sink, drown up to their waist in any substance they may be standing. The target cannot move in any of the target substances. Duration is dice dependent. Phantom stag. The caster calls forth a large stag made of shadows that can act as protection, a guide, or as a scout for the caster. The caster can see through the eyes of the stag. The stag is only hurt by magical weapons and spells. Duration is dice dependent. Drift net. All targets in an area, up to 6, get tangled together and can't move for 2 turns. Bubble. Causes a bubble around the caster, companion to act as a protective barrier. Can also capture enemies in a bubble. Duration is dice dependent. Stone walk. The caster can walk through solid stone. Duration is dice dependent. Biogas. The air around the target explodes in hot gases. Gene pool. The target transforms into the caster's choice of animal. This cannot be a magical monster or any magical beast. Transformation. The caster can transform into any animal. Animal size and strength will depend on the caster's ability. Duration is dice dependent. Earth elemental. Caster calls forth a being made of rock to attack the enemies. Duration is dice dependent. Earthen protection. The earth rises and protects the target, either deflecting attacks or burying the enemies alive. Duration is dice dependent. Earth beast transformation. the target changes into an earth monstrosity, being able to use all types of earth attacks, control any earth in the area, and instantly travel through the earth in a 40-foot radius. Duration is dice dependent. In this form, the target is only hurt by magic weapons and spells. Flesh to stone, cause an enemy to turn to stone. Stone to the flesh, the ability to turn a stone statue, companion back to life. In the case of a statue, the now flesh being will serve the caster for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. War sect. Origin of the deity of war. Name, Crop. Crop's beginnings are a little humbler than some of the other deities. He started as a great warrior, with a terrible secret. He was cursed at birth with the powers of a great magician. He used his powers to learn the art of war and to keep in touch with the world around him. Due to his dislike of magic, he continued to store up great magical reserves in his frail human body. One day his army was beaten up against the inland sea, and rather than see his beloved soldiers die, he reached deep within himself and let all the pent-up energy that he was carrying loose against his enemies. A man destroyed the enemies. Rather than flee in terror from him, his soldiers fell and worshipped him as their hero. From that point on, the deity of war was born. Minor spells. Enchant weapon, causes a regular, magical weapon to become enchanted. The weapon is now able to smash through armor and shields. In the case of arrows, it acts like a small missile. Duration is dice dependent. Strength upgrade, causes the caster, companion to have a doubling in strength for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Message, the caster can send any of his, her companions a message, no matter how far away they are. Spiked, studded wall, creates a large metal spiked and studded wall 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall that the caster can hurl at an enemy, with lifting. Duration is dice dependent. Hardness, the caster's weapon, arrow becomes strengthened to a super hardness, and is thus able to penetrate armor or doors much easier. Rhino charge, the caster can hit the target with the fourth of a charging rhinoceros. Code cracking, the caster can crack any enemy codes. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Arrow storm, causes a hail, 30 to 40, of arrows to hit a certain area. Airborne, the caster's target drops on the enemy from above. Blinding light, causes a light that will cause blindness to all who look at it. Duration is dice dependent. Bandoliers, a never-ending belt of throwing knives, or a never-ending quiver, appear on the target. Duration is dice dependent. Summon war mount, caster calls forth a mighty war beast, part lizard, and part feline, that the caster can ride upon. This beast can attack with teeth and claws. The amount will stay till the next morning. Thunderclap, the caster claps her hands together, causing a mighty noise that stuns all who hear it. Metal melt, causes the target metal to become red hot and melt. Duration is dice dependent. Fear, causes the enemy to run in fear from the caster for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Beaten zone, an area is created in which all range weapons entering the area automatically hit their target and cause a mortal wound. The area is 100 feet by 100 feet. Duration is dice dependent. Ferocity, the caster causes the target to become exceedingly ferocious, and the target can now take 3 to 4 mortal hits before being stopped. Duration is dice dependent. Mountain stance, the caster can withstand any rush attack and not be moved. The caster has her feet planted with the power of the mountains. Duration is dice dependent. Reverse, the caster causes the attack to turn back on the attacker. Multicolored shield, the caster creates a shield of 4 colors. Red blocks fire, white blocks ice, gray blocks range attacks, and orange blocks magical spells. The shield can take 4 hits for each color before no longer stopping that substance. Scimitar protection. A giant scimitar appears near the target, protecting them from attacks, and doing the target's bidding. Duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Godly Shout caster yells at such volume that the target's eardrums rupture and all breakable items shatter. All metal weapons vibrate so hard that the target loses her grip on them. Personal shield. The caster can create a shield to protect herself. This can be shaped into any shape of a reasonable size. It can be used as a sword, javelin, whip, or made into some other shape to attack with. Duration is dice dependent. This spell will stop both magic and non-magical attacks, amounting to up to 1 roll of the dice, minimum 5. Summon warrior. The caster calls forth a mighty warrior to act as his bodyguard. Duration is dice dependent. This guard is equipped with a sword and shield or bow, arrows. Blood to water. The caster causes all the blood in the target to turn to water. Duration is dice dependent. Bayonet. The target receives a magic knife that they can use to cut through all protection and penetrate any armor. This includes all magical protection, barriers. This knife lasts just 1 turn. Dragon Might. Caster receives the strength of a small dragon. Duration is dice dependent. Bloodlust. Causes caster, companions to go on an attacking spree, being able to soak up more damage and magical attacks than before. Also increases the character's speed and ability. Duration is dice dependent. Ambush. The target can creep up on the intended victim without being detected by any means except for a clerical mind sweep. If the target attacks or does magic on the way, then the spell is broken. Duration is dice dependent. Alpha. The target receives all the abilities and powers from everyone in a 100-foot radius around them. As the abilities and magic leave the area, those who had them before fall helpless to the ground. Duration is dice dependent. Ogre power. Caster, companions have the power of an ogre for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Origin of the deity of battle. Name, Pelia. Pelia came into the world amid a battle. Her mother gave birth on the battlefield, during a great battle. Pelia received her powers in a way that was different from the other deities. A powerful wizard on the enemy's side saw the birth occurring and remembered that it was told to him by the stars that his life would end when new life began, surrounded by death and decay. The evil wizard decided to kill the child right there and then. When the mother saw the wizard's intentions, she grabbed a large shiny shield that was lying on the ground next to her and deflected the spell back at the wizard. Or at least tried to do so. Most of the spell returned to the wizard, but some of the spell still connected the mother, daughter, and the wizard together. The scholars are a little vague at this point to what may have happened. All we know for a fact is that the wizard, mother, and daughter somehow became one entity, ruled by the daughter's will and power. It is thought now that the wizard and mother perished in the spell's backfire, but the daughter gained power and her mother's body. The spell backfired enough that all the magic in the area was sucked into the daughter. Thus Pelia was born, grew up, and became a deity on the same day. Minor spells. Dews of Heaven causes a mist to settle on an area, and all in the mist is healed. Duration is dice dependent. Undead in the mist are heavily damaged, if not destroyed. Blinding Light causes a light that will cause blindness to all who look at it. Duration is dice dependent. Ow, the target knows where all companions are on the whole battlefield. Duration is dice dependent. Fear causes the enemy to run in fear from the caster for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Area Silence. An area of quiet surrounds the targets in the size, square feet, of 1 roll of the die. Duration is dice dependent. Message. The caster can send any of her companions a message, no matter how far away they are. Group Stealth causes a group to become stealthier. Duration is dice dependent. Abates. A large phalanx, 10 feet wide by 12 feet deep, of sharpened sticks appears in front of the target. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Airborne ranges, the caster's companions, up to 6, get lifted and drop silently on the enemy from above. Sonic blast causes a force of blasting sound to knock over everything in a certain area. Hardness, the caster's weapon, arrow becomes strengthened to a super hardness, and is thus able to penetrate armor or doors much easier. Duration is dice dependent. Metal melt causes the target metal in an area to become red hot and melt. Duration is dice dependent. Arrow storm causes a hail, 30 to 40, of arrows to hit a certain area. Reverse, the caster causes the attack to turn back on the attacker. This is effective for up to 20 weapons, spells at a time. Heat area weapons cause all weapons in an area to become red hot. Duration is dice dependent. Blinding weapons causes all the target's weapons to become exceedingly shiny and reflect all light in the area. Does not affect the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Ferocity, the caster causes the targets to become exceedingly ferocious, and the targets can now take 3 to 4 mortal hits before being stopped. Duration is dice dependent. Enchant weapon area enchants all weapons in a certain area. Duration is dice dependent. Drag spell, the ability to drag friendly forces, up to 50, out of a battle, up to 500 feet away. Major spells. Personal shield, cleric has the ability to create a shield to protect himself with. This can also be shaped into any shape of reasonable size. It can be used as a sword, javelin, whip, or made into some other shape to attack with. Duration is dice dependent. Bombproof, the target takes no damage from any attacks. Duration is dice dependent. While the spell is active, the target cannot attack or use magic, or the spell breaks. Multicolored shields, the caster creates a shield of 4 colors for each of the companions, 6 max. Red blocks fire, white blocks ice, gray blocks ranges attacks, and orange blocks magical spells. The shield can take 4 hits for each color before no longer stopping that substance. Blood to water, the caster causes all the blood in the target area to turn to water. Duration is dice dependent. Artillery, the area of the caster's choosing gets pounded with up to 40 magic missiles. The area is 40 feet by 40 feet. Each missile hits with enough force to incinerate a normal warrior. Duration is dice dependent. Dragon might, the group receives the strength of a small dragon. Duration is dice dependent. Transport group, can transport a group from one destination to another. Caster must see the beginning and ending destination. Duration is dice dependent. Battalion backup 200 warriors, 100 armed with swords and shields and 100 armed with bows, arrows, appear to back up the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Bloodlust area causes everyone in a large area to go on an attacking spree, being able to soak up more damage and magical attacks than before, for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Also increases the character's speed and agility. Healing sect. Origin of the deity of healing. Name, Brigid. Before Brigid became a deity, she was widely known as one of the greatest healers in all the land. She would heal all that came to her, for no cost and no obligation to serve. Less is known about her fighting prowess. Some say that all her powers came from the great hammer she carried. Many times her capture was attempted so that she could be made to work for a dark end. All the attempts failed. As in so many cases, her downfall was from within herself. It has been said that all her life was devoted to healing until she met Shalik. Shalik was a prince from far away who was afflicted with cancer. When he was healed, Brigid instantly fell in love with him. he fell in love with the power that she represented. When Bridget discovered Shalak's treachery, she used all her power and that of the hammer to self-implode. The mistake she made was that she didn't realize the extinction that her healing had had on those around her. As she was leaving the earth, she looked down and saw thousands mourning her death and offering her all their powers if she would return. She was filled with such compassion for them that she returned to them as the healing deity, Bridget. Minor spells. Stunning causes an enemy to become stunned for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Weapon heat causes all weapons on the targeted person to heat up. Duration is dice dependent. Air thickens causes air to thicken, creating a barrier to stop weapons, enemies from advancing. Duration is dice dependent. The barrier is 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall. Harmonize. The caster can change their voice to match any voice they have ever heard. Duration is dice dependent. Moonblade. The caster creates a blade out of moonlight to fight with. Duration is dice dependent. The blade causes great damage to undead and also blinds all evil beings that look at it. Dews of heaven causes a mist to settle on an area, and all in the mist are healed. Duration is dice dependent. Undead in the mist are heavily damaged, if not destroyed. Disorientation causes enemies to become confused and either miss shots, or not hit with melee attacks for some time. Duration is dice dependent. Blinding weapons causes all the target's weapons to become exceedingly shiny and reflect all light in the area. Does not affect the target. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Ischemia. The limb of choice goes numb and can't be used. Duration is dice dependent. Magical binding causes magical ropes to tie up an individual of the caster's choosing for a certain time period. Duration is dice dependent. Holy tune. The caster sings a song that causes all evil, especially the undead, who hear it to become stunned for 3 rounds. Healing steel. The caster steals any healing energy that is being used at that moment to either heal themselves or recharge their mana by 2 spell slots every steal for minor healing spells. 4 spell slots per turn for mid-level spells, and 6 spell slots per turn for major healing spells. Duration is dice dependent. Contraction. The target is shrunk to half its size. Duration is dice dependent. Growth factors. The target grows up to 12 feet tall. The height is controlled by the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Rebuke. The caster causes the target to not want to battle with him, her anymore. Duration is dice dependent. Confusion causes the target to not know who or where she is. Duration is dice dependent. Reverse. The caster causes the attack to turn back on the attacker. Duration is dice dependent. Power toss. Caster throws the target 30 to 60 feet. Unless the target hits something first. Lionheart causes the target to only want to help the companions out. Duration is dice dependent. Weapons bless. The target is now blessed by the deity to have the power of an enchanted weapon. If a bow, all arrows fired from the bow are as a magic missile and explode on impact. Terror. The caster causes the target to become terrified of an unknown being. Duration is dice dependent. Super healing powers. Clerics can heal for an extended period of time without losing magical energies or having it cost them mana. Duration is dice dependent. Phase. Caster has the ability to move from one patch of light to another. The caster must see both starting and end points. Multicolored shield. The caster creates a shield of 4 colors. Red blocks fire, white blocks ice, gray blocks range attacks, and orange blocks magical spells. The shield can take 4 hits for each color before no longer stopping that substance. Evil eye. The caster glares at the target, causing them to freeze in place. In this state, the target cannot move nor do any magic for 2 turns. Duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Enzymatic reaction. the target's body speeds up so fast that it grows old and collapses in 2 turns that are not healed. Divine Blight. Caster brings forth an area blessed by their deity that causes massive damage to undead in that area. If the caster is in the area she quickly heals from any wounds. Duration is dice dependent. Dreamwalker. The caster can leave her physical body and move around as a spectre. This spectre can pass through solid objects and is only detected by magical means. Duration is dice dependent. Reverse healing. Caster causes the target to become violently sick, and if not immediately treated, the target goes unconscious. Dermis. The target's skin gets massive 3rd-degree burns and the target cannot move. Fibrin. The target's blood clots, causing them to cough uncontrollably until they are healed or pass out. Macrophage. The body's own cells eat it itself from the inside out. Duration is dice dependent. Multiplication. An image of the caster, companion comes forth to confuse the attacker for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. The image has no attack ability, and the caster takes no damage if the image is hit. Invisibility. Caster vanishes from the sight for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. While invisibly, the caster cannot be detected by magic or non-magic means. If the caster attacks or does magic, then the spell is broken. Power of the deity. While activated, the target becomes supercharged with healing powers. Everyone they look at instantly is healed of any wounds, no matter how severe. They also receive a massive bonus against any undead and will melt them, no matter how powerful they are, if they lay their hands on them. Duration is dice dependent. Lunar Cleric. A lunar cleric is considered by most to be a strange recluse, who hides during the day and comes out mostly at night. That impression is not totally true. A lunar cleric can function very well during the day. However, in the night they can hide as well as a shadow stalker, and can fade into any patch of moonlight and remain unseen if they don't move, attack, or use magic. For this reason, the lunar clerics have formed a tight-knit group, called the Selena Group. What this group does is act as special security to rich dignitaries and other people who can pay the price to hire their services. Or anyone their deity tells them to keep alive. They can always find a well-paying job in any large city or town as a special guard, and many rich and powerful people donate large sums to their temples to have their deity favor them. Origin of the lunar cleric. Name: Aegel. Aegel was rumored to have first shown up after a large meteor storm hit the Earth. The area that was hit was covered by a giant volcano, and many of the meteors ended up landing in the volcano. One, in particular, was larger than the rest and was serving as a home to a sleeping being of great power from another realm. On impact, the being awoke and realized that it needed followers in order to stay alive and to create more power for itself on the current plane that it was trapped in. A wandering adventurer was in the area, saw the meteor shower and went to explore the area looking for gems from the sky. The being and the wanderer met and came to an agreement. The being gained the wanderer's help, and the wanderer became the first lunar cleric. The lunar cleric has a special ability on the day before, during, and after the full moon. Their powers are 1/3 times stronger. On the other side of the coin, the day before, during, and after the new moon, their powers are 1/3 times weaker. The lunar mage is a better than average fighter and likes to fight in close with non-ranged weapons. Due to these close proximity attacks, they are not good at ranged weapons, or long-distance attacks. A good starting outfit for a lunar mage would be mace, 2 throwing hammers, and light armor. A lunar cleric starts out with the regular cleric spells, and can earn the rest from adventuring. Minor spells. Albedo. The target reflects all light in the area, till it shines with up to 10,000 candle watts. This will also affect the caster's companions. Duration is dice dependent. Annular eclipse. the target is rimmed with a red light and can be seen wherever they may try to hide. Duration is dice dependent. Earthshine, the target glows brightly. Duration is dice dependent. Moonrise, the area in a 100-foot radius of the caster now gives off a gentle light. Duration is dice dependent. Moonset, the area in a 100-foot radius of the caster is plunged into magical darkness, leaving only the caster able to see. Duration is dice dependent. Palace, the target is plunged into a 6-foot swamp filled with giant crocodiles and poisonous serpents. Duration is dice dependent. Rotation, the target is made to spin rapidly in place. Duration is dice dependent. Zenith, the target can only look straight up. Duration is dice dependent. Liberations, the target shakes so hard they drop all weapons and armor. Mid-level spells. Angular diameter, the target sees everything as close as an electron microscope and can't focus in to hit anything with their attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Crescent moon creation, the target can take a patch of moonlight and use it to create a weapon or piece of armor. Duration is dice dependent. The created weapon or armor is super tough and can withstand up to 3 non-magical blows. Lunar claws, the target acquires 4 2-foot-long claws on each hand made out of moonlight. In the daytime, these claws are invisible to the non-magical eye. Duration is dice dependent. Opposition, the target attacks whomever the caster wants them to. Duration is dice dependent. Basalt, any fire attacks are transformed into a basalt super-hardened weapon of the caster's choice. Duration is dice dependent. Mare, the caster creates a large warhorse made of basalt to ride. This horse runs 3 times faster than a regular horse and can only be harmed by magical weapons. The horse lasted till dawn the next day. Longitude, the target can't move for the length of the moon's morning termination, for 10 minutes. Celestial mechanic, the target is weighed down with a massive weight and can't move for the number of turns of one roll of the die. Anorthositic, the target's calcium is totally removed from their bones, making the next strike shatter whatever bone it hits. Satellite protection, the caster creates a glowing ball that circles the target, blocking 4 rage attacks, 4 melee attacks, and 4 minor spells. Duration is dice dependent. Lunar rays, 5 rays of intense moonlight shoot at the target. These cause massive damage to any undead and will penetrate all non-magical substances, and remove all protection from whatever it hits. Dark side, the target becomes the opposite in spirit to what they are. If the target was good, they now only want to do evil, and if evil, they now only want to do good. This confuses the target so much that they just collapse and start crying. Duration is dice dependent. Lacus, the target is sent to the middle of the closest lake or large body of water. Aphelion, the target is sent to the farthest place the caster has ever been. Eclipse, the target move is moved in the path of an attack right before it hits the caster. Breccia, the caster can copy up to 30 items, coins, gems, etc., into all of the same types. This can be done once per day. No magical items can be copied or created. Crater wall, the target is thrown into the closest solid object. Major spells. Node, the caster can gather all magical energy from a 100-foot radius and place it in the ground for their use, or for the use of another. One person can access the node energy. Duration is dice dependent. Rill, that target's body becomes encased in long rips and tears that resemble valleys and streams and need to be healed within 2 turns or they will collapse from loss of blood. Duration is dice dependent. Gravity, the caster can hold down the target with as much force as they want. They can crush the target flat, or just hold them still. Duration is dice dependent. Grazing occultation, the caster can move between any 2 points of light. The caster needs to see the starting and end points. Meteoroid, the target is hit by a 1-ton meteor that shoots out of the caster's hands. Far side, the target is sent to the far side of the moon. Intercalation, the target is sent back 1 day in time to where they are standing. Techites, that target is transformed into glass, and doesn't die unless smashed, duration is dice dependent. Lunar companions, the caster can create up to 4 copies of themselves that have the same spells and abilities as the caster, duration is dice dependent. Lunar monstrosity, the target is transformed into a being made of moonlight and energy. This being can control all light in the area and can travel between any 2 points of light that can be seen. The target's spells now cost no mana, and they are immune to all non-magical attacks. In this form, the being can draw the light out of anyone within 100 feet and turn that into extra mana for themselves or give it to others. If they draw the light out of a target, the target goes unconscious. This being can put anyone to sleep in this form by just looking at him. Duration is dice dependent. Charge cleric. As the name implies, charge clerics are attended to the electricity of the world around them, and the electricity that is flowing through all living things. These clerics can take these flows and bend them to their use. Charge clerics start with all the regular spells that clerics have. Origin of the charge deity, name, Fulgur. Fulgur was created into existence by a mistake made by 2 battling archmages. They were both reaching into the spirit world at the same time and for the same spirit, which happened to be a large electrical monstrosity. Being pulled in 2 directions at one time allowed the beast to break free of the control of both of the wizards at the same time as it crossed over to our world. However, the wizards' minds were still attached to the beast as it appeared. They understood the only way to survive and control the beast was to fuse as one and take control of the beast. They surrendered to the inevitable and became one entity, the charge deity. They now can tap into the realms of magic, as well as the other planes. This came with a price, however. They need followers to continue their existence in the new form. Thus the charge deity was formed, created, fused with one main goal in mind, to recruit followers. Some say the charge clerics are a more militant order, and even though they have access to all the usual clerical spells, they also have some spells that other clerics consider more on the wizard side of magic. A stranger order, it is said, and one that can be found among many armies and battles. With that said, it is a highly sought-after sect for battles since they can heal as well as any cleric, yet are not so concerned with causing damage to whom they consider enemies. The following spells are available to the charge cleric. Minor spells. Ampere. The target is immune to all electrical attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Circuit. The target can throw all electrical attacks back at the caster. One-time use. Conductor. All electrical attacks in the area are drawn to the target, either recharging their mana by 2 spell slots every steal for minor electrical spells, 4 spell slots per turn for mid-level electrical spells, and 6 spell slots per turn for major electrical spells. If healing is chosen, the target gets healed 1/2 of their injuries. Duration is dice dependent. Coulomb. The caster throws a huge amount of raw electrical energy at the target, one-time use. Electrical weapon. The target's weapon gets charged with electrical power, adding electrical damage to all attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Group weapon charge. The group of the target's choosing, not to exceed 6, weapons get charged with electrical power, adding electrical damage to all attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Shock. The target is shocked to their core, causing them to either miss their attack or to lose their concentration while trying to cast a spell, one-time use only. Distortion. The target starts to stutter and can't finish a spell. This does not affect clerics. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Aliasing. The target's upper body is stuck to the front of their legs, forcing them to bend at the waist. Duration is dice dependent. Pulse. the target's heart rhythm is disrupted, causing them to have a massive heart attack. If not healed within 2 turns, they will pass out. One-time use. Lightning. The caster shoots forth a bolt of lightning at the target. Ice lightning. The lightning bolt splits into many smaller bolts when the major one hits the target. Each jumped bolt does less and less damage than the original. The bolt can jump up to 6 different times. Electrical touch. The target's hands become empowered with electrical energy, electrocuting everything that is touched. Duration is dice dependent. Crowbar circuit. A massive 4-foot-long crowbar made of electricity appears in the target's hands. Duration is dice dependent. Battery. The target's mana gets recharged at the rate of 3 spells per turn. Duration is dice dependent. Charged shield. The target's shield is charged with electricity, so that with every block a surge of energy travels up the enemy's weapon to strike them. One-time use only. Parallel shunt. 2 targets of the casters choose to become charged, and they fly together to become stuck. Duration is dice dependent. Electrical bomb. The caster tosses a grenade that explodes with electrically charged shrapnel. One-time use. Thunderclap. The caster claps her hands together, causing a mighty noise that stuns all who hear it. Electrical blade. The caster calls forth a sword made of electrical energy to fight with. Duration is dice dependent. Gaze of death. The caster's gaze is locked onto the target's, and the target becomes lost in the caster's gaze, and slowly goes unconscious. Duration is dice dependent. Charged quiver. That target's quiver becomes enchanted so that every arrow shot out of it becomes a lightning arrow. Duration is dice dependent. Charged stomp. The caster stomps their foot down, causing electricity to shoot off in all directions in a 6-foot distance. One-time use only. Bridge tide load. The target is stuck to the spot they are standing at. However, every spell the target now does is 3 times more powerful. Duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Deep cover. As long as the target doesn't attack, do magic or move faster than a walk, they are not detectable by magic or non-magical means. Duration is dice dependent. APC. When activated, the target only uses the cost of 1 spell slot for every minor spell for every 3 spells, be they major, mid-level, or minor. Duration is dice dependent. Click and pop. Whatever the target touches on the enemy or object after using the spell will pop that target off. This can apply to arms, legs, heads, locks, etc. This will not affect magical items. One-time use. Contact bounce. The target bounces around for as many turns as 1 roll of the dice. While bouncing, the target cannot use weapons or cast spells. Charged monstrosity. The target transforms into an electrical beast, only taking damage from magical weapons and spells, and being able to use all electrical attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Multicolored shield. The caster creates a shield of 4 colors. Red blocks fire, white blocks ice, gray blocks range attacks, and orange blocks magical spells. The shield can take 4 hits for each color before no longer stopping that substance. Anti-magic. The caster causes all magic in an area to become nullified. Duration is dice dependent. The caster still can use magic. Guardian lightning. A ball of lightning surrounds the caster, shooting small lightning bolts at nearby enemies. Duration is dice dependent. Lightning storm. An electrical storm is summoned, taking 1 full turn, and the caster can call down 3 bolts of massive lightning per turn. Duration is dice dependent. Amplitude lightning. The caster sacrifices 2 major spells to shoot a massive lightning bolt. This will burn through most magical and non-magical protection and hit the target. Duration is dice dependent. Death Cleric. Death Clerics have the added ability to talk to any spirit or ghost. The undead being does not have to listen to the cleric's directions unless forced by a spell. Origin of the deity of death. Name, Nuglade. As a boy, Nuglade was said to be strange. He always enjoyed funerals and time outside after dark. He taught himself the languages of the creatures of the night, bats, rats, and the mighty wolves. As he grew to a teenager, the villagers drove him from his home. They were afraid of what he might become in the future. It was true that he was gaining powers from the night creatures, but these powers were to help those around him, not to cause death and destruction. He then traveled to a great city, where he was unknown. He used his powers to survive in the catacombs for many years. While there he taught himself to talk to the spirits of the undead. From them, he located many great troves of riches and magical items. He took the magic from these items and made him his own. He found a way to tap into the netherworld and gain strength. The magic made him mighty, but it was an elixir to his human side. He could not get enough. One day he pulled all that he could from the other world and all the objects that he owned, and his frail human body became dust. He was able to use all the powers to create a body out of the dust and dirt in the catacombs, but he had to leave their embrace. He fled to the surface, started helping others, and gained many followers. Thus Nuglade became the deity of death. The following spells are available to death clerics. Minor spells. Gather darkness, gathers a dark cloud around an area or object, duration is dice dependent. Blindness, causes the target to become blind, duration is dice dependent. Ethics, the target will not fight with the caster, but will attack anyone who tries to hurt the caster, duration is dice dependent. Mourner, a great sadness overcomes the target, and they fall to the ground and can only weep, duration is dice dependent. Night vision, caster can see in the dark, be it normal or magical, duration is dice dependent. Minion retrieval, caster calls up creatures of the night, such as bats, rats, wolves, and owls, 5 max of each, to fight for him, her, duration is dice dependent. Grave, an 8-foot deep hole opens under the target, causing them to fall in it, duration is dice dependent. Undead control, causes undead to follow the caster's orders for a limited time, duration is dice dependent. Hellstead, the caster calls forth a fiendish steed to ride. The steed runs 3 times faster than a regular steed, duration is dice dependent. Terror, the caster causes the target to become terrified of an unknown being, duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Madness, can cause the target to become insane, attacking all around the target. In this state, the target has increased strength, agility, and the ability to receive multiple mortal wounds without dying, duration is dice dependent. Pupil servant, a flying eye comes to the bidding of the caster that can travel at large and the caster sees through the eye, duration is dice dependent. Blood to water, the caster causes all the blood in the target to flow like water, causing the target to go unconscious, duration is dice dependent. Ferocity, the caster causes the target to become exceedingly ferocious, and the target can now take 3 to 4 mortal hits before being stopped, duration is dice dependent. Ghoulish touch, caster takes on the power of a ghoul such that if touched, the target feels terrible pain, and the target gets stunned in that limb, area, duration is dice dependent. Darkness claws, caster grows 4 large claws made of shadow that rend the target, duration is dice dependent. Darkness doorways, caster can travel between 2 patches of darkness. The caster must see both the starting and ending points. Living tattoo, the caster causes an image to appear on the target, and this image comes alive and attacks the target, duration is dice dependent. Flight, caster grows large bat wings and can fly, duration is dice dependent. Ghost trap, the caster calls forth a phantom spirit to grab hold of the target. The target becomes paralyzed and can't move, duration is dice dependent. Embalm, the target falls over, embalmed. The target is not dead, but can't move till the spell wears out. Duration is dice dependent. Burial garments. The target is wrapped up tightly in white cloth, and only the caster can free them unless they are cut out with magical weapons. Duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Vault. The target is encased in stone and can't move. Duration is dice dependent. Casket. The target is sent to a casket that is located in another dimension of the caster's knowledge. The target can be brought back to the present dimension in the caster's wishes. Duration is dice dependent. Once the spell duration is over, the target automatically returns to the original dimension. Plaque of rats. A swarm of giant rats the size of German shepherds, 30 to 40, attaches to the target. Duration is dice dependent. Nauseating breath. The caster spews forth a choking, stinking cloud that renders the target unable to breathe. Death notice. The target receives a note that makes them think they are about to die, and they go crazy, attacking all around them. The target must read the note to be affected. Duration is dice dependent. Summon Spirit Guardian. A spirit comes to the aid of the target and will follow all directions given. If an enemy is grabbed by the spirit, then the enemy will become paralyzed. Duration is dice dependent. Brain rot. Causes the target to get a migraine, and then to go unconscious. Pestilence and famine. Caster can cause a scourge of sickness and hunger over an area. The size of the area is determined by the power of the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Mummification. Can instantly mummify any dead, or living, enemy. These mummies will now fight for the cleric. Final rites. If requested, the requester will return from the dead and follow the caster's orders. The returned being has the powers it had in life, and if resurrected before the spell ends, doesn't lose the highest power it had in life. Duration is dice dependent. Survivor. The target will live through one attack, no matter what it is, and receive no ill effects from it. Hellish Hordes. Calls forth 10 demons armed with claws and fangs to protect the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Doom Tide. The caster calls forth waves of blinding darkness that cause all who are hit to become weak, blind, and confused, rendering them unable to do anything. Duration is dice dependent. Shadow Hand Sect. Origin of Shadow Hand deity. Name, Karenlik. Karenlik started out his life as a trapped spirit, having been banished through a gate to another dimension in a battle with a powerful wizard. Karenlik spent his time studying all around him and using his remaining powers to keep his end of the gate open. He learned that there was a magical sink in his last world that was feeding his current world that he was trapped in. He was able to tap into this sink and build up colossal reserves of power. He used these powers to build up a great fortune, and also unlock parts of his mind so that he could share this power with others. As long as the sink was open to him, he would have close to unlimited powers. After a time, a group of adventurers gated close to him, and he was able to link his gate to theirs, thus finding a way back to the world that he was from. One of the adventurers chose to become his new head cleric, and he was able to use this new link to get back to the world he was from. Shadow Hand clerics are a neutral bunch, and some say they lean a little towards some of the dark arts. Because of this, they are not trusted by the other cleric branches, and non-lethal battles between the branches break out regularly. Shadow Hand clerics gain a few extra abilities that other clerics don't get. They can call upon undead in a mile radius to help them in battle. The undead don't have to help, but usually do, in exchange for a favor from the cleric. Shadow clerics can also block a paladin's sensing when they are a 1/2 mile or closer to the paladin. The following spells a Shadow Hand cleric gets from adventuring. Minor spells. Resist darkness. The target is resistant to all darkness-based attacks. Duration is dice dependent. Grenadier. The caster hurls an exploding grenade that causes a shrapnel-based attack. This will hurt the caster's companions as well. Madness can cause the target to become insane, attacking all around the target. In this state, the target has increased strength, agility, and the ability to receive multiple mortal wounds without dying. Duration is dice dependent. Night vision, caster can see in the dark. Duration is dice dependent. Flight, caster grows large bat wings and can fly for a certain amount of time. Duration is dice dependent. Minion retrieval, caster calls up creatures of the night, such as bats, rats, wolves, and owls to fight for him, her. Duration is dice dependent. Hell steed, the caster calls forth a fiendish steed to ride. The steed runs 3 times faster than a regular steed. The steed stays for 6 hours at a time. Terror, the caster causes the target to become terrified of an unknown being. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Guardian darkness, a globe of darkness surrounds the target, protecting them from 4 ranged attacks, 4 melee attacks, 4 minor or 2 major spells, and keeping up to 4 enemies at least 8 feet away from the target. Duration is dice dependent. Ghoulish touch, caster takes on the power of a ghoul such that if touched, the target feels terrible pain, and loses all power in the affected area. Duration is dice dependent. Darkness claws, caster grows 4 large claws made of shadow that rend the target. Duration is dice dependent. Leech, the target of the spell becomes so mad that it attacks one target, and one target only, of the caster's choosing. Duration is dice dependent. She attacks until the target is dead, they are dead, or the spell runs out. Darkness weapon, the caster can create any weapon out of the darkness that they want. Duration is dice dependent. Speed of the werewolf, the caster moves as fast as a werewolf, which is 2.5 times faster than normal speed. Duration is dice dependent. Grip of the wolf, the caster can grab the target with as much power of a werewolf's bite. Duration is dice dependent. Vampiric fangs, the caster grows the fangs of a vampire, and if they bite their target, the target must serve the caster for 2 days. Puppy, the target follows the caster around trying to get the caster's approval by doing whatever they want him to do and protecting the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Major spells. Slave, the target becomes a slave to the caster. Duration is dice dependent. Combo, the target loses all their mana and energy to the caster, and the target falls unconscious. Voice of power, when this voice is used, the target must obey a 1-word command given by the caster, 1-time use only. Primus, the caster causes everyone in the sound of their voice to obey their commands for 1 action. Duration is dice dependent. Skin, the target looks like whatever the caster wants it to. Duration is dice dependent. Darkness doorways, caster can travel between 2 patches of darkness. The caster must see both the starting and ending points. Mana sink, the caster can use all living things around him, herself to keep their mana reserves full or give mana to a friend in need. If they draw mana from living human beings, then they lose a part of their soul to the shadow cleric deity, until they will become undead themselves, living only to serve the deity, and running from the battle after it is done, never to be seen from again. Duration is dice dependent. Undead servant, a beloved companion can decide to serve the cleric. For this to occur, the servant becomes an undead with vampire-like powers, but is not harmed by sunlight. For the servant to truly die, the cleric that created it must also die. The depths of Cardrum. Resurrect companion. The caster can raise a companion from the dead. Horace the dragon hunter. The resurrected companion is now an undead and must serve the caster for a full day. The resurrected companion has all the powers that they had in life. Darkness Lord. The cleric becomes a being made totally of darkness and can use any darkness magic that she can imagine. The cleric is only harmed by magic weapons and spells and can also possess any being that they come into contact with. Duration is dice dependent. Bestiary Cleric. Origin of the Bestiary deity. Name, unknown. The Bestiary sect is a little different than all the other sects. This is a sect that combines the powers of a druid, an earth cleric, and a paladin. The characters have a chance to get the powers of all three groups, yet in a slightly different way. Those powers are used to fulfill what is known as the 3 tiers. These tiers govern the powers and responsibilities that the bestiary has and uses, and in what way. The 3 tiers are 1. Protect and care for the earth, 2. Protect the wilds and the animals therein, and 3. Destroy those who oppose life. Follow the 3 tiers and prosper. By following the first 3 tiers, the 4th tier comes into play. The deity will bless their cleric with special temporary powers to help them fulfill their responsibilities, such as access to more spells, or an increase in mana. To become a bestiary cleric, you must travel to the town of Siniska, in the plains. In that town, there is the bestiary temple. The head cleric will give you a task, and if that task is fulfilled correctly, then you will be allowed to become a bestiary cleric. Only a druid, cleric, or paladin can become a bestiary cleric. Bestiary clerics can use bladed weapons if they like. When they are accepted into the order, if they are not already a paladin, then they will be given a physical upgrade, to the extinction of a strong warrior. If they are already a paladin, then they keep their physical prowess. They now have some basic weapon proficiency and can use all types of weapons to fight with. In the forest, a bestiary cleric can hide as well as an elf, but not as well as a druid. Bestiary clerics still have all the powers that regular clerics get from their amulets. They also can sense the earth around them and feel out for evil or corrupt areas. They also are a beacon, same as a druid, for animals and good beasts that might be in the area and need help. They can understand and speak to animals, and the natural ability to calm down angry animals that might be in a rage. They have a special sensitivity for the undead. Any undead that are in a 40-foot radius of the cleric will cause their amulet to alert him to the undead. Then the cleric needs to rest for about 3 to 4 days to allow their magical energy to recharge. Bestiary clerics can receive all the spells that all clerics can receive, and they also have the chance to have some special spells. They can earn some of the spells that an earth cleric, a paladin, and some of the druidic abilities. A bestiary cleric looks like a strong warrior but does not use very heavy armor. Just light to medium armor. They are fast and usually can dodge most attacks. The following is a list of spells that the bestiary cleric starts with. Holy Light. The caster claps their hands above their head, causing a blinding light to all undead and evil creatures in the area. Companions are not affected by the light. After the initial clap, there is a ball of glowing light hovering in the air that will follow the mental commands of the cleric. Duration is dice dependent. Heal. The cleric must touch the wounded person to heal him, her. They can heal all types of wounds and keep mortally wounded people alive, and after a short time, can heal them fully. Growth. The cleric can shoot vines out of their hands. These can be used to tie up an individual or as a rope. Holy Earth. The cleric creates a 4x4 foot area of blessed ground that they are scented on. This area does not travel with the cleric. Any spells used in this area will have extra power, and if the cleric or any companions are wounded and enter the area, then they will slowly be healed. Duration is dice dependent. Shapeshift. The cleric can change to any animal that is as small as or smaller than a large German shepherd. Extended stay, more than 4 hours, in any animal shape will cause the cleric's mana to run out quickly. As the cleric receives new spells or abilities, then the cleric can change into larger animals, until she has the power of a druid's transformation. The following are spells that the bestiary cleric can receive. Minor spells. Earthen Wall, a wall of earth that can be raised up to block incoming attacks or enemies. The wall is 6 feet high, 4 feet wide and 3 feet thick, duration is dice dependent. Bridge of rock. A walkway of stone is created across a space. This bridge can be up to 40 feet long and can hold up to 2,000 pounds, duration is dice dependent. Minor weather control. The caster can call up minor weather such as fog, rain, wind, snow, or etc. Duration is dice dependent. Weapons bless. The weapon is blessed by the deity to have the power of an enchanted weapon. If a bow, all arrows fired from the bow are as a magic missile and explode on impact. Robes of power. The cleric's robes, armor is blessed by the deity. They now reduce 3/4 of the damage done to the cleric. Duration is dice dependent. Pegasus. The steed of the caster grows wings and can fly. Duration is dice dependent. Ferocity. The caster causes the target to become exceedingly ferocious, and the target can now take 3 to 4 mortal hits before being stopped. Duration is dice dependent. Mid-level spells. Stone walk. The caster can walk through solid stone. Duration is dice dependent. Earth elemental. Caster calls forth a being made of rock to attack the enemies. Duration is dice dependent. Animal strength. The target gets an upgrade in strength to the strength of a grizzly bear. Duration is dice dependent. Animal transformation. The cleric can change into any animal of choice. Duration is dice dependent. Dark sight. The target can now see in the dark as if it is daylight. Duration is dice dependent. Eyes of the hawk. The target can see up to 2 miles in any direction as long as there is nothing in the way of the sight. Duration is dice dependent. Speed of the cheetah. The target can run as fast as a cheetah. Duration is dice dependent. Poison claws. The target's hands transform into claws, which are poisoned. This poison causes the wounded enemy to curl up in agonizing pain. Duration is dice dependent. Gills. The target receives gills and can breathe underwater. Duration is dice dependent. Jaws of the great white. The target received the head of a great white shark, with all the strength and teeth that go with it. Duration is dice dependent. Power of the beast. The caster can call upon a certain power of any animal and use that power in battle. This could be but is not limited to speed, strength, or the ability to fly. Duration is dice dependent. Rock toss. The caster can throw rocks at targets, causing them to hit with the power of a magic missile. 1 spell for 2 rocks tossed. Transmutation. Caster can change parts of their body to that of an animal, such as changing their arms to wings, or their hand to a large tiger claw. Duration is dice dependent. Sound lance. The caster creates a lance made of sound that can pierce any non-magical armor. The lance does terrible damage to the undead. Duration is dice dependent. Summon help. The cleric calls forth an ally from the surrounding wilds. The ally depends on where the caster is located. No monsters will come to the call. Duration is dice dependent. Living water. An elemental made of water comes to fight for the caster. Water must be available to make the elemental. Duration is dice dependent. Power slap. The caster can slap the target with such power that the target will fly 20 feet through the air, unless they hit something first. Multicolored shield. The caster creates a shield of 4 colors. Red blocks fire, white blocks ice, gray blocks range attacks, and orange blocks magical spells. The shield can take 4 hits for each color before no longer stopping that substance. Major spells. Major weather call. The caster can call up all types of natural weather. Duration is dice dependent. Weather master. The caster can call up all types of weather and storms, magical and normal. Duration is dice dependent. Summon monster. The closest monster in the area will come to fight for the cleric for a dice-dependent time. After that time, the monster can attack anyone it wants. Hands of light. The cleric's hands glow with a pure white light. These hands cause massive damage to undead and demons when they are touched and give off a glow of purity. Only powerful undead can come in the glow when the spell is activated, and they will take damage while in the light. Duration is dice dependent. All companions and the caster touched by these hands will instantly heal. Trident of the deity. The cleric's weapon in their hand becomes a trident blessed with power from the deity. This trident causes massive damage to the undead and penetrates all regular armor. Duration is dice dependent. Moonbeams. Beams of blessed moonlight shoot out of the cleric's fingertips. They can shoot 5 beams a turn, having to renew the spell every turn. The beams will burn holes in undead and cause massive damage to evil creatures. War mount. The cleric calls forth a massive beast to ride on into battle. This beast is like a giant cat covered with scales. The beast is very fast, has large claws and fangs, and can spit out an acid shot. Duration is dice dependent. Flesh to stone. Cause an enemy to turn to stone. Stone to the flesh. The ability to turn a stone statue, companion back to life. In the case of a statue, the now flesh being will serve the caster for a certain time. Duration is dice dependent. Champion of the deity. The cleric becomes empowered with a massive energy bonus from the deity. She now has access to all spells available to every cleric and can change into any animal, including all beasts that a druid can change into. The cleric also cannot be hurt by non-magical weapons while in this form. Duration is dice dependent.